Gold, the metal that launched empires, triggered wars, and built fortunes, but also quietly helped destroy entire nations. What if I told you that the very thing we think of as safe, stable, and eternal has been at the center of some of history's worst economic disasters? Welcome to Financial Mysteries. Today, we're unraveling the gold mystery that ruined nations. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you'll never look at gold or safe assets the same way again. Let's start with a simple idea. More gold should mean more wealth, right? More coins, more bars, more treasure, more prosperity. But history tells a very different story. Sometimes, when a nation finds gold, what it really finds is its own destruction. Our first case, the Spanish Empire in the 16th century. Spain hit what looked like the ultimate jackpot. After conquering vast territories in the Americas, Spanish ships began crossing the Atlantic loaded with unimaginable quantities of gold and silver. Treasure fleets arrived year after year, pouring precious metal into the royal coffers. To many Europeans at the time, Spain looked invincible. How could a country drowning in gold ever go broke? But underneath the glitter, something dark was happening. So much gold and silver entered Europe that it triggered what historians call the price revolution. Over roughly a century, prices of basic goods didn't just creep up, they exploded. In many regions, prices rose by several 100%. Wages didn't keep pace. Ordinary people saw their savings lose value year after year, decade after decade. Imagine working your whole life, saving in coins that suddenly buy less bread, less cloth, less anything, each time you go to the market. It felt like a slow-motion robbery. Spain, sitting at the center of this storm, faced a brutal paradox. The crown had more gold than any other power in Europe, but that gold bought less every year. Meanwhile, the empire was fighting wars across Europe, maintaining fleets, funding royal courts, and trying to control its vast territories. The solution? Borrow more. Spend more. Rely on future treasure shipments to pay yesterday's debts. But inflation was eating away at the value of everything. The more ships arrived with gold, the higher prices climbed. Spain declared state bankruptcies multiple times. Gold that should have secured its dominance instead destabilized its economy, hollowed out its productive sectors, and pushed it into long-term decline. The lesson? A flood of gold can be just as dangerous as a drought of it. Now, fast forward a few centuries. Same metal, different mystery. By the early 20th century, much of the world was on the gold standard. That meant each country's currency was either made of gold or directly backed by it. On paper, this looked like the perfect system. Stable, predictable, disciplined. You couldn't just print money at will. You needed gold to back it. But then came the Great Depression. As the global economy started to crack in 1929, something terrifying happened. Banks failed. Businesses collapsed. People lost faith. They didn't trust paper promises anymore. So what did they do? They rushed to convert their money into gold, the one thing they believed couldn't fail. This is where the gold equals safety idea backfired. Under the gold standard, governments couldn't simply inject more money into the economy to stop the freefall. Their hands were tied by how much gold they had in their vaults. If they tried to save banks and companies by printing money, they risked running out of gold and triggering a full-blown currency crisis. So instead, many countries did the opposite of what was needed. They raised interest rates, cut spending, and defended their gold reserves, while their economies crumbled. Look at Europe in 1931. Austria's largest bank, Creditanstalt, collapsed. The failure sent shockwaves across the continent. Investors panicked. Depositors lined up to withdraw their money, often demanding gold. Germany came under intense pressure. Gold reserves drained. Governments felt trapped between saving their banking systems and protecting their gold. The result was a vicious deflationary spiral. Prices fell, Wages fell, unemployment exploded. When prices drop, but your debts stay the same, those debts become heavier and heavier. Millions of people were crushed under this weight. The gold standard, designed to create stability, had turned into a golden cage. Countries that abandoned gold earlier, like Britain in 1931, started recovering sooner. Those that clung to gold, like France and some others, stayed stuck in depression longer. Once again, gold, supposedly the ultimate safeguard, became a silent accomplice in ruining economies. So we have one mystery where too much gold destroyed an empire, and another where the rigid worship of gold deepened a global depression. But let's go back to a different type of gold disaster, the California gold rush. In 1848, gold was discovered at Sutter's Mill. Word spread, and suddenly the world rushed toward California. Hundreds of thousands of prospectors, merchants, and adventurers poured in. Gold poured out. At first glance, this sounds like a pure economic boom story. More gold, more money, more activity. And yes, some people did get incredibly rich. Towns exploded into cities. Trade skyrocketed, but there was a hidden cost. So much new gold entered circulation that it rapidly expanded the money supply. In California itself, prices went insane. In some cases, the cost of basic goods soared by up to 1,000%. A loaf of bread, a simple tool, a place to sleep, all became absurdly expensive. Wages rose for some workers, but not enough for many others. If you weren't one of the lucky few striking big veins of gold, you might find yourself poorer in real terms, even while earning in shiny metal. The shock didn't stay local. The United States as a whole experienced a wave of inflation, with wholesale prices jumping significantly over the following years. And when booms are built on sudden money surges, they often end in panics. By the mid-1850s, financial instability hit, and credit crises followed. Once again, gold brought a quick rush of apparent wealth, followed by turmoil and collapse for many. Finally, we reach 1971, the moment when the world officially broke up with gold, at least on paper. After World War II, the Bretton Woods system tied the global monetary order to the US dollar, and the dollar itself was tied to gold at a fixed rate, $35 per ounce. Other currencies pegged themselves to the dollar, and the dollar promised convertibility into gold. But as the decades passed, the U.S. spent heavily on social programs, and especially on the Vietnam War. Dollars flowed out across the world, but the gold backing them did not grow nearly as fast. Other countries started to doubt whether the U.S. could really convert all those dollars into gold at 35 an ounce. Foreign governments began demanding gold in exchange for their dollars. U.S. gold reserves started to drain. The world faced a dangerous question. What happens if the country issuing the global reserve currency runs out of the metal backing it? On August 15, 1971, President Richard Nixon went on television and announced that the U.S. would temporarily suspend the convertibility of the dollar into gold. That temporary move became permanent. The gold window slammed shut. This Nixon shock ended the last major link between national currencies and gold. The world entered a new era of floating exchange rates and fully fiat money. Money backed not by metal, but by trust in governments and central banks. Did this solve the gold mystery? Not exactly. It simply transformed it. Now, instead of asking, "Do we have enough gold?" nations started asking, "Can we manage debt, inflation, and trust without any gold backing it all?" And that's the question we're still wrestling with today. So what is the gold mystery that ruined nations? It's not that gold is evil, or that it's always bad. The real mystery is that something so simple, a shiny, relatively scarce metal, can cause chaos, both when there's too much of it and when there's too little. Gold can inflate away the power of an empire, drowning in treasure. It can strangle economies locked into a rigid standard. It can supercharge speculative booms and deepen busts. Gold looks like certainty, but again and again, it has exposed human weakness, greed, fear, short-term thinking, and blind faith in hard solutions to complex problems. So next time you hear someone say, "If we just went back to gold, everything would be stable," remember Spain's inflation, the misery of the Great Depression, the chaos of gold rushes, and the break with Bretton Woods. Gold didn't ruin nations on its own. It amplified the choices their leaders made. And if you want more deep stories like this, about the hidden forces behind money and power, make sure to subscribe to Financial Mysteries and turn on notifications so you won't miss the next episode.